You know that feeling? When you're working hard, maybe paying the bills mostly, but actually getting ahead financially feels kind of impossible sometimes, right? Like you're stuck.
Yeah, like running in place.
Exactly. So today we're diving deep into a story that really hits that feeling square on.
We are. It's a first-person account, actually. Someone who was in a spot a lot of people might recognize. Basically broke at 30.
And not just a little broke, like less than $200 in the bank broke. The source we're digging into is their article, I was broke at 30, here's how I became a millionaire by 35. It's this really practical, almost step-by-step look at how they managed that turnaround in just 5 years.
And what's really compelling, I think, is that it wasn't, a lottery win or some kind of crazy, unbelievable scheme. It was very deliberate. Very disciplined, as we'll see.
Right. So our mission here is to pull out the key ideas, the actionable stuff from this journey. What can we learn that might, apply to our own situations?
Exactly. And there are definitely some surprising bits, some really valuable nuggets in this story.
Okay, let's dive in. Year one, where did it all start?
So picture this, age 30, facing, serious financial stress, less than $200, struggling with rent, that feeling of just treading water.
Yeah.
They even mention this image of, instant noodles on a worn-out couch. It's a really relatable low point, I think.
Totally. That feeling of working hard but just not seeing any real progress, it's frustrating.
It really is. And it shows, doesn't it, that just having a job, even working hard at it, isn't always enough on its own to build wealth.
Good point. They were employed, had a degree, but still stuck.
Right. You need a strategy. You need to know where the money's actually going.
Which brings us to the very first step they took, brutal honesty. They admitted they'd kind of been avoiding looking too closely, but then they just buckled down and tracked everything, every dollar in, every dollar out, in a spreadsheet.
Sounds basic, but wow, what a turning point. You can't navigate without a map, right?
Right.
And tracking is that map for your money.
Yeah.
And what they found was pretty eye-opening.
I bet. What stood out?
Well, big things, like $300 a month just on eating out, another $100 on subscriptions they weren't even using anymore.
Oof. The subscription creep. It gets you.
Totally. And then, those easy Amazon clicks just adding up and up. It showed they were living way beyond their actual means.
It's such a common trap, isn't it? Those little expenses just nibbling away.
Exactly. So the realization hit. They were spending like they earned way more.
So immediate action.
Oh, yeah. Ruthless, I think was the word they used.
Yeah.
Cut the subscriptions, started cooking basically all meals at home.
Made some bigger changes too, right?
Yeah, tough ones. Moved to a smaller place, got a roommate to split costs, even sold off stuff they didn't need anymore. It was like a full financial declutter.
Wow, that's decisive.
And those actions, they immediately created some breathing room in the budget, just a little bit extra cash.
And what did they do with that?
Smart move, psychologically. They paid off their smallest credit card debt first.
Ah, the debt snowball method. Get that quick win.
Exactly. Builds momentum, gives you that feeling of, okay, I can do this. Makes the bigger debts seem less daunting.
Okay, so that's year one. Facing reality, cutting costs, getting a small win. What about year two?
So year two, the focus shifts. They'd cut expenses, which was great, but they hit a wall.
How so?
Their job paid about $42,000 a year. And there wasn't really any room for growth or significant raises. They realized, saving was crucial, but it wasn't going to be enough on its own.
Right. There's only so much you can cut back.
Precisely. So the next logical step.
Yeah.
Increase the income.
Okay, how did they approach that?
This is where it gets really proactive.
Yeah.
They decided to learn digital marketing.
Interesting. How'd they learn? Expensive courses?
Nope. Mostly free resources, actually. YouTube tutorials, online courses they could find for cheap or free reading blogs, just soaking up knowledge.
Resourceful.
Very. And crucially, they didn't just learn passively. They went out and offered their new skills for free to some local small businesses.
Ah, smart. Build experience, get testimonials.
Exactly. Real-world practice. And that hustle, it paid off. They landed their first paying client.
Nice.
$500 a month. Not, life-changing money on its own, but huge EE for validation. It proved people would pay for these new skills.
That must have been a massive confidence boost.
Totally. And from there, they just kept building that freelance side hustle.
Yeah.
Doing Facebook ads, email marketing, content stuff.
So the side income started to grow.
Yeah, steadily. By the end of year two, that freelance business was bringing in an extra $2,000 a month.
Wow. Okay. That's significant on top of the day job.
Definitely. And here's the important part. They didn't just spend that extra cash.
Ah, resisting the temptation.
Exactly. They used it strategically. Part of it went to hitting their debt harder, paying it down faster.
Good.
And the other part, they started investing.
Already, even with debt.
Yep. Focused on simple, long-term stuff. Basic index funds.
Yeah.
There's diversified baskets of stocks.
Uh-huh. Low cost tracks the market.
Right. And they opened a Roth IRA. Smart move for the tax benefits down the road.
So even early on, it wasn't just about getting out of the hole. It was about building assets, too.
That's the key shift. From just surviving to actually starting to build wealth. Even small amounts invested early can make a big difference later.
Okay, so year 3. Spending's controlled, income's up, investing has started. What happens next?
Year 3 seems to be about a big internal shift, a mindset change.
How so?
They talk about moving from trying to look rich to actually focusing on becoming rich.
Interesting distinction. What did that look like practically?
Well, even though their income was way up now, between the job and the freelance work, they kept living frugally.
Still, no upgrade.
Pretty much. Kept the old car, still cooked most meals at home, didn't suddenly buy a whole new wardrobe, resisting that lifestyle inflation,
That takes serious discipline when more money starts coming in.
It really does. But that discipline was crucial because it meant they could funnel a huge chunk of their income into savings and investments.
How much are we talking?
Get this, 60%. 60% of their total income was being saved and invested by this point.
Whoa, 60, that's intense. That shows real focus.
Absolutely. And it was around this time they read a book that apparently had a big impact, The Millionaire Fast Lane by M.J. DeMarco.
Ah, okay. I've heard of that one. What's the gist?
Well, a core idea is that real wealth, especially built relatively quickly, often comes from ownership and scalable income. Things that aren't directly tied to trading your time for money, like a traditional job.
So less about the slow, steady saving route, more about creating something bigger.
Kind of. It emphasizes business models that can grow without you needing to put in proportionally more hours. Think systems, products, assets.
I see. And this influenced their next move.
Big time. Reading that book seemed to crystallize a decision that was probably already forming.
Which was?
To shift focus entirely towards starting their own business, taking the freelance stuff to the next level.
Okay, so that leads us into year 4, the big leap.
Exactly. Year 4 is when they actually quit the steady 42K job to go all in on their marketing agency.
Wow, that must have been scary. Trading security for the unknown.
Oh, yeah. They're very open about the fear, the uncertainty. It feels very real, It's not presented as some easy, fearless decision.
That makes it more relatable, I think. So they launched the agency full-time, smooth sailing.
Hardly. They talk about the classic startup struggles, super long hours, constantly chasing new clients, dealing with invoices, moments of serious self-doubt.
The entrepreneur's roller coaster.
Totally. But they just kept grinding, kept pushing through it. Persistence was obviously key.
Were they just working harder or smarter, too?
Definitely smarter as well. They started systemizing their services, making things more efficient. They hired a virtual assistant to offload some tasks.
Starting to build a team, delegate.
Right. And critically, they focused relentlessly on getting great results for their clients.
Which leads to
word-of-mouth referrals, the best kind of marketing. And because they were delivering real value, they could start raising their prices.
Nice. So the business started gaining real traction.
Big time. By the end of year 4, the agency pulled in over $250,000 in revenue.
$250,000. That's huge growth from freelancing.
Massive. But again, note the discipline. They paid themselves a pretty modest salary, maybe $60K or so.
Okay. So where did the rest of the revenue go?
Reinvested. Back into the business to fuel more growth and also into their personal investments. Playing the long game.
Smart. And wasn't there another big move in year 4, something about property?
Yes. Huge step. They bought their first real estate investment. A duplex.
Okay, how'd they manage that? Big down payment.
They use an FHA loan, which typically allows for a much lower down payment.
Yeah.
Made it more accessible.
And the plan for the duplex?
Lived in one unit themselves, rented out the other.
House hacking. Genius. That must have slashed their housing costs.
Dramatically. Plus, they were now building equity and had a rental income stream. It's a major shift towards acquiring assets that generate income or reduce expenses.
Okay, so agency booming. First property acquired. Things are really accelerating by the end of year 4. What about year 5?
Year 5 is where it all really seems to compound and scale up. The marketing agency just kept growing.
Bigger numbers.
Yeah, crossed $500,000 in annual revenue.
Wow.
Over $500.
Wow.
And with that growth, they could hire actual full-time employees delegate more of the day-to-day work.
Freeing them up to do what?
Focus on the big picture. Strategy, growth, new opportunities, less being in the business, more working on the business.
Makes sense. Did they add other income streams?
They did. Started creating digital products related to their marketing expertise. Things like online courses, templates.
Passive income.
Yeah.
Leveraging their knowledge in a scalable way.
Exactly. Earn money without directly trading time for it. That's another fast lane kind of principle in action.
And the real estate.
Didn't stop there. Used profits from the business to buy 2 more rental properties.
Okay, so really building that portfolio now. Business income feeding asset acquisition.
That's the engine right there.
Yeah.
Business success, creating capital to buy income-producing assets. And all throughout this, still living relatively modestly, still investing consistently.
The discipline held.
It seems so. And the culmination of all this, the business growth, the real estate, the investments, the consistent saving.
Don't leave us hanging.
By the end of year 5, they hit it. Net worth crossed the $1 million mark.
Millionaire by 35. From basically 0 at 30. Incredible.
And they make a point to clarify, this wasn't like $1 million cash sitting in a vault. It was in assets.
Right. Equity in the real estate, the value of the business itself, retirement accounts, other investments.
Exactly. Real, tangible, wealth-building assets, not just flashy spending.
Okay, that 5-year journey is quite something. If we boil it down, what are the core lessons we can pull from this?
Well, the first one seems blindingly obvious, but it's where it all started. Face the numbers. You absolutely have to know where your money is going. That financial transparency is non-negotiable.
Cannot fix what you don't measure. Yeah.
Tied right into that is living below your means. That conscious decision to not let spending inflate as income rose, that created the fuel for everything else.
Yeah, that gap between earning and spending is where the magic happens.
Then there's skill up. Actively acquiring high-value skills, digital marketing in this case, that are actually in demand. That's what powered the income jump.
Definitely. Lifelong learning isn't just a buzzword here.
And a big one. Own, don't rent.
Yeah.
Financially speaking, anyway. Building ownership, whether it's a business that generates profit or real estate that generates rent and equity, that seems way more powerful than just being an employee long-term.
Right. Shifting from just earning a wage to owning the income stream.
And underpinning it all. Invest consistently. Not trying to get rich quick in the market, just steadily putting money into diversified investments over the long haul. Letting compound interest do its work.
No market timing, just time in the market.
Exactly. And maybe the overarching lesson, play the long game. This wasn't overnight. It was 5 years of focused, consistent effort, no magic bullets.
Yeah, that 5-year timeline is important. It took dedication. So the big takeaway seems to be that hitting that millionaire mark wasn't about luck or genius, but really about intentionality.
Intentionality, discipline, having a plan, and sticking to it, even when it was hard.
So for someone listening, what's the significance? Why should this story resonate?
I think it shows that major financial change is possible, even from a really tough starting point.
Yeah.
This person wasn't, born with a silver spoon or some insider connection.
Right. It feels achievable. Demanding, yes, but achievable with the right principles.
Exactly. It's about applying these fundamental ideas. They're not really secrets, are they?
Yeah.
It's the consistent application that makes the difference.
Yeah. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Looking at those principles, facing the numbers, living below means, skilling up, owning, investing, playing the long game. Which one feels most relevant to you right now?
What's maybe one small thing inspired by this deep dive that someone could actually do today or this week? Not to replicate the whole journey overnight, obviously, but just to start applying some of that wisdom.
That's a great way to frame it. It's not about copying every step, but finding the principle that resonates most and taking one concrete action. That's how change starts.
Well, thanks for digging into this one with us today. Hopefully, pulling apart this journey offers some valuable perspective, maybe some inspiration for anyone navigating their own financial path.
Like so, too. It's a powerful story.